All right, friends, it's Lorene. I'm going to be going over the Crescent Motif Shawl with you. Now, I did a tutorial a moment ago that was a little faster paced, and I realized that the yarn I used was the same color yarn as the table, which makes it difficult to see. And I realized that I went a little faster than is probably helpful for some people. So I am going to redo the pattern. Right now I'm going to use a thicker weight yarn, and I'm going to use a larger hook just so that it's easier for you to see what we're doing. Now in the beginning of the first tutorial that I did, I went over all the notes for this pattern. I'm going to also go over them here in this pattern, okay, or this tutorial. The pattern notes where the next stitches will be placed. Anything not mentioned from the previous row will be skipped. So if the pattern says to chain 2 and slip stitch into the chain 3, but between where you are and the chain 3 there are some double crochets, you're just going to skip over those double crochets and just work into what is actually written in the pattern. The pattern would get very wordy if I had to write everything you're skipping, and it would probably confuse you more. So just be mindful of what the pattern says and kind of try to ignore the rest. The chain 3 at the end of each odd row is considered the first double crochet of the next row, and the last stitch for each even row will be placed in the chain 3 from the previous row. The body portion of the shawl consists of double crochet stitches. The motif section is separated by a chain 3 on even rows and a chain 2 slip stitch in the chain 3 from the previous row and a chain 2. Your odd rows, which are also your right side rows, are working towards the edging with the motifs, and the even rows, which are your wrong side rows, are working toward the straight edge or the top of the shawl. Each repeat of the pattern, which are rows 4, 5, 6, and 7, create one motif along the edging. The shawl will be completed in 3 sections. You have an increase section, an even section, and a decrease section. You can make your shawl any length you like by adding motifs on the increase section or the section worked evenly. Just be sure if you add increases on the increase section that you do the same amount of decreases on the decrease section to make it even. You can make your shawl any depth that you want, and you can just do that by increasing on every row in the increase section and decreasing every row on the decrease section. All right, so we're going to get to the pattern now. And again, I said I'm using a thicker yarn and a larger hook just so that you can visually see a little bit better, okay? So we begin with a slip stitch on our hook and we chain 4. Now I'm going to work this tutorial much slower than the first one that I did. So you will have 2 options when you watch your tutorial, whether you'd rather use the more advanced or the a little slower version. Now, you have your chain 4. You are going to place your stitches into the first chain you made, which is right here. This is the 4th chain from the hook. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, you're going to do 2 double crochet. Now when I work into chains, I like to work over so that I have 2 loops on the top of my hook, but that's a preference. You can do whatever works for you. So chain 2 double crochet in that 4th chain from the hook. At the end of this row, we're going to chain 3 and turn, but I want to show you here. This is your chain 4. This is the top of your chain 4. This was the bottom of the chain 4 where you worked your 2 double crochet stitches. Now you're going to chain 3 and turn. Now you're set up to begin row 2. So you're going to place your first double crochet in the first stitch right here. That's also the base of where that chain 3 is, and this becomes or counts as 2 double crochet in the first stitch. Get your 2 double crochet, and now we're going to begin working on the edging. So we are going to chain 3, we're going to skip the next double crochet and we're going to work into the last double crochet, which is the chain 4 that you began with. So into this stitch, you're going to place a shell. That's going to be 3 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet. And we work that all into the same stitch. Now this is 3. You're going to chain 2, and then you're going to do your last 3 double crochet, all into the top of that same stitch. This is an edge shell. You're going to have 2 different types of shells in this pattern. One worked in the edge and one worked in the motif. So differentiate, I can never say that word, to show you the difference, this one's called an edging shell, and the other one is going to be called a motif shell. All right, so now you're just going to chain 4, and that completes row 3. I'm sorry, row 2. All right, now you're going to turn your work. You are going to place a shell into the center of this shell, or the chain 2 of the previous shell you just did. So again, a shell is 3 double crochet, one, 2, 3 double crochet, chain 2, and 3 double crochet, all worked into that same chain 2 space. All right, now we are working back towards the body of the shell. Or sorry, the body of the shawl. So we're going to chain 2. And this is where I said if the pattern doesn't specifically mention stitches, you just skip them. So it says the chain 2 and then slip stitch into the chain 3, which is right here. So you just skip these stitches in between that. So slip stitch into that chain 3, chain 2, and then double crochet in the next double crochet, and 2 double crochet in the last double crochet. This is the only time you're going to be placing 2 double crochets in that last stitch. For the remainder of the pattern, you are only doing 1 double crochet in that last stitch. Okay, now we're going to chain 3 and turn. That completes row 3. So we're going to take a look at that. Now this is your wrong side. All right, so it's your odd rows are wrong side rows. And you're going to be working back towards the edging of the motif. Now we haven't created the motif yet. We're going to be working that in the next steps. This is just the edging, and this is the body of the shawl. All right, so we're going to double crochet in the first stitch, double crochet in each of the next double crochets. For this first motif, it's an additional 2 double crochet. Now since this is a series of repeats, I do not have a stitch total for these stitches in every row, but each even row that you do, or each row that you're working back towards the edging, you add 1 double crochet. So that is accomplished here with this turning chain 3 and double crochet in the first stitch. That counts as 2 double crochet in the first stitch. So you are adding a double crochet for each even row you work. Now we're getting to where we separate the body of the shawl from the edging. We're going to chain 3. We're going to skip over all of this, and we are going to work into this shell right here. We're going to do another shell into that shell. So 3 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet, all worked into that same chain 2 space. One more double crochet there. All right, now we're back towards our edging. We're going to be working on our first motif. So we chain 4, and we single crochet into the next chain 4. Now I do want to point out that every time we are working into a chain, you're always going to be working into the next available chain. So it's always going to be the closest one to you. Okay, so we're going to single crochet into that chain. Now we're going to chain 4 again. We're going to turn the work, so flip everything over, and you are going to single crochet into the chain 4 that you previously made. And again, it's the next available chain, so that's right there. So you just single crochet into that space. Now you've made 1 loop. This is the loop here that I want you to mark. I again forgot to grab a stitch marker, so I can't mark it myself, but this loop is the only loop that you're going to have in this pattern. So it'll be easy to find when you come back around, but that's where you're going to mark. Okay, now we're going to chain 4 again. And now we're working back up towards the body of the shawl. We're going to put a shell right here in this shell. So 3 double crochet. Chain 2. 3 double crochet. Now you're going to chain 2. You're going to slip stitch in the chain 3 from the previous row. Chain 2 again. Now you're just going to double crochet in every stitch to the end. And the last stitch is going to be at the top of the turning chain 3 from the previous row. You're going to chain 3 at the end of this row. You're going to turn your work. Now we're working on row 6. So you're going to double crochet in the first double crochet. You're going to double crochet in each double crochet. When you get to where you're separating the body from the shawl of the edging, you're going to chain 3. And then you're going to place a shell in that shell. Go a little bit wider here. So double crochet, or 3 double crochet. Chain 2, 3 double crochet. You can see the body of the shawl is starting to grow there. Your edging is all being worked straight, and now we're coming to making the first motif. So you chain 4, you're going to single crochet in the next chain, which is right here, it's the next chain available to you, single crochet, chain 3, now into this marked loop right here, if you had marked that, this is where you'd be working. You're going to place another shell. This is going to be your motif shell. You work it the same way, 3 double crochet, chain 2, and 3 double crochet. You work all of that into that marked chain loop. Alright, so there's that shell. Now we're going to chain 3. You're going to single crochet in the next chain 4. Now this chain 4 already has a stitch worked into it from the previous row, but you're still going to work right in that chain space, okay? Single crochet, chain 1, and turn your work. Now you're going to do the last step of the motif. This is row 7. You're going to place 4 double crochet into that first chain space. So chain 3, 3, and 4. So that's 4 double crochet in that first chain 3 space. Now in this shell you are going to do 3 double crochet, picot, 3 double crochet. So again, you're skipping all these stitches, you're just working into that chain 2 space. So do 3 double crochet. A picot is very simple. A picot is just a chain 3. And then you're going to slip stitch into the first chain that you made. Again, I like to make sure that I have, when I work into a chain, that I'm working so that I have 2 loops. So just slip stitch. Now you're going to do the next 3 double crochet. Again, they're all being worked into that same chain 2 space. You're going to skip here because they're not mentioned, because it says that you're going to do 4 double crochet, chain 1, slip stitch into the next chain 3. So we have our 4 double crochet, 2, 3, 4, chain 1, slip stitch into that same space, okay? Now you're going to slip stitch into the next chain 4. And then you're going to chain 4. So you've completed 1 full motif. You're going to place another edging shell in this edging shell. So you do a 3 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet. You're going to chain 2. You're going to slip stitch into the next chain 3, chain 2 again, and work your double crochet stitches all the way to the end. That wasn't that bad. I know the pattern is very counterintuitive. It seems very different than something you would normally do. It doesn't quite make sense when you look at it. So I understand that it seems a lot more complicated than what it is, because there's a lot of words and a lot of places you're chaining into. But once you get that first motif, it should be a lot easier for you to continue on. I'm just going to show you the anatomy of the shawl now that we've done our first motif. This is the body of the shawl. As I said, on every even row, or every row that you're working towards the edging, you're going to be adding 1 double crochet. So it is going to continue to grow. This part is the only part of the pattern that is going to change from here on out. This whole part, which is your edging and your motif, this is going to stay same the entire rest of the pattern. This part is all going to be worked the same. So here's the only place you're going to work anything different. We're going to do 1 full pattern repeat, which are rows 4 through 7, to create 1 more motif. And then I'm going to go over how you work this section evenly and how you decrease this section for the next 2 parts of the shawl. Excuse me. All right, so we're going to begin on a pattern row 4, all right? So we're doing one full repeat. So beginning with row 4, we chain 3, we turn our work, we double crochet in the first stitch, and in every stitch to the end. Now we've come to where we're going to separate the shawl from the edging. We're going to chain 3. Going to work a shell or a 3 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet into that chain 2. All right, 3 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet. I'm glad I used a thicker yarn and hook here to show you guys because it's so much easier for you to see the pattern using a thicker yarn. You may even want to do the first couple motifs to teach yourself the pattern with a thicker yarn. And then once you have it down, you should be able to create the rest of the shawl kind of by rote. Okay, so we're going to chain 4. And we single crochet in the chain 4 from the previous row. So single crochet. You're going to chain 4 again. And you're going to turn your work. You're going to place a single crochet in that chain. And this is where you would mark your loop. You're going to chain 4 again. And now you're going to shell in your shell. We have 3 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet. Going to chain 2, slip stitch into the chain 3 from the previous row, and then just work your double crochets. Okay, we're going to chain 3 at the end of this row. Now we're going to do row 6. So turn your work, double crochet in the first double crochet, and double crochet in every stitch, or every double crochet. I'm going to chain 3 to separate. Shell into your next shell. Three double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet, now we're back at our motif. So we're going to chain 4, single crochet into the next chain 4, chain 3, and into your marked chain loop right here, you're going to place a shell. So 3 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet, you completed your shell. Now chain 3 and single crochet into the next chain, which again already has a stitch in it. Now you're going to chain 1 and you're going to turn your work, Do 4 double crochet into that first chain space. Three, 4, and into the chain 2 here, you're going to do 3 double crochet, picot, 3 double crochet. So for 3 double crochet, into picot you chain 3 and slip stitch into the first chain, and then 3 more double crochet. Now into the next chain 3, or the next chain space, you're going to do 4 double crochet, chain 1, and slip stitch, all in the same stitch or same chain. 1, 2, 3, 4. Chain 1 and slip stitch, all in that same chain. Now you're going to slip stitch into the next chain 4, just right there, and you're going to chain 4. Shell into your next shell. Our shells are 3 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet. It's all worked into that same chain 2. And you're gonna chain 2, single crochet in the chain 3, chain 2 again. You're back at your double crochet stitches, and we're just gonna double crochet all the way to the end. So that was 1 complete motif repeat. It was rows 4, 5, 6, and 7. Those 4 rows make 1 complete repeat. Now for the increase section of your shawl, you're going to do that 12 more times. You're going to repeat those 4 rows 12 more times. So you have 2 motifs. You're going to want a total of 14 for your increase section. And again, that's just going to be worked exactly how we've done it. This part's going to continue to grow and get wider. The rest of it's all going to be worked exactly the same. Now, the next section, you work this part of the pattern evenly. And that just means that it doesn't increase or decrease at all. It's just going to be worked the even amount of stitches. Now, in the beginning of these rows, the increase rows, we have chained 3 and turned and double crocheted into the first stitch, which effectively gives us 2 double crochets in the same stitch. If we didn't do that, if we just chained and turned and worked into the second stitch, it would have a gap. So I don't want to do that when I work evenly because I want to maintain the integrity of the edge. So what we're going to do after you've done 12 more motifs or 12 more repeats of rows 4 through 7, we're going to work an even row. Okay, it's done just slightly different. You chain 3 and turn the same way. Now when you work this row, instead of doing a double crochet in the first stitch and a double crochet in the second stitch, you're going to double crochet 2 together over the first stitch and the second stitch. So this is what would normally be a decrease stitch. Before I do that, this is what normally would be a decrease stitch, but because you're also doing the chain 3 at the beginning, it's adding a stitch and taking a stitch away, so you're still working evenly. So you're going to yarn over, insert your hook into the first stitch, yarn over and pull through. It will give you 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through the first 2. Yarn over again, insert your hook into the second stitch, yarn over and pull through. You will have 4 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops, and yarn over and pull through the remaining 3 loops. So that gives you a double crochet 2 together. And then you just continue to double crochet all the way to the end. Or double crochet in every double crochet, I should say. So now all of these double crochet rows for the next section are going to be even. So when you work back across the other way, you're going to work in every double crochet. This double crochet 2 together, you're only going to have 1 stitch to work into, and then you're going to work into the top of your chain 3. So that part's going to be worked the same. And that's the only difference for working your even rows. Now I'm going to work a little bit of this row so that I can show you our decrease sections. So I'm going to work 1 shell here because I want it to look as if you were really working this row. So as I said, you do a total of 14 increase sections for the motifs. Then you're going to do a total of 19 finished motifs for the working even section. And now we're at our decrease. All right, so we're going to turn our work. We're going to pretend we are in our decrease section. The first row of the decrease section is the same, where you do your chain 3, turn, double crochet 2 together, and continue to work. The only difference is going to be the next even row, or working towards the shell edge, or the edge of the shawl. And this will make sense when you get to it in the pattern. But in order for me to show you that, I would have to work the entire pattern, so we'd be here for quite some time. So this is going to be the chain 2 and slip stitch and chain 2, working back towards the finished edge of the shawl. Now we already have a decrease stitch here, even though it's not really a decrease because you added a stitch and took one away, it's worked even, but we are going to add a real decrease stitch right here. And we're just going to do a double crochet 2 together like we just did. So yarn over, insert your hook in the first stitch, yarn over, draw through, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, insert your hook in the next stitch, pull through the first 2 loops, and pull through the remaining 3 loops. And that gives you your double crochet 2 together. And then you just double crochet all the way to the end. So this gives us a decrease on every other row, just like we had an increase on every other row in the increase section. So it will match the first side that you did. Again, the rest of the pattern all remains the same. So all of your edging in your motif is going to be worked exactly the same way. The only changes to the pattern take place here in this section. You will end up working your stitches all the way to the end till it looks just like this. And then your shawl will be complete. I hope that this tutorial was beneficial for you. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me at any time. I will be happy to answer them for you. If you do decide that you like a thicker yarn for your finished shawl, you can do that. You're going to have to do a little bit of gauging with your eyes. So you're going to work the pattern the same. You're going to do an increase. You're going to increase your motifs until you get as many as you want. So it's going to end up, depending on how many motifs you put in your center section, it's going to end up being about 1/3 of your pattern. So once you get it to the width that you like, now you can start working evenly. And depending on how many motifs of the even section you add in is going to be how long the center of your shawl is. Once you've reached the desired width for the center, and you're going to want to make sure that you do that center working even section in an odd number of repeats. So you're going to want to have an odd number of motifs there. Then you're going to decrease your work in the same fashion, the same amount of rows that you did, or the same amount of repeats you did for your increase section. You could also play around with this. You could make it an asymmetrical shawl. You could just work your increases, and the shawl is going to end up looking like this. So you work your increases, and then when you come to this final, you work it as long as you like, and when you come up to this final edge, you could just do shells along the edge to finish it off. That would also look very pretty. So you can definitely customize this pattern to whatever suits your needs. This is just how I did it for our sample. Again, if you have any questions, I'm always available. You can email me at creation@ymail.com, or you can leave a message in the Facebook group, whatever you're comfortable with, and I will get back to you. Have a great day, guys. Thank you.